Hello there, glad to have you join us again here on Arise News. For the next 6 hours, we shall be bringing you all you need to know about the unfolding electoral process with updates across the states of the Federation. I am Bambai Mutiniri.
I am Rotis Odiri. The results across the 28 states where the polls hold are still trickling in, and as we commence this broadcast, we will continue to link up with our hard-working correspondents in collation centers across Nigeria for updates.
And I'm Cynthia Are. The Arise News coverage of the 2023 governorship and House of Assembly elections begins right now.
All right, we now cross directly to Rivers State, where Oviatimi George is on standby to give us an update from what's been an extremely eventful morning at the Collation Center. So, Oviatimi George, good day. And what's the update? I know it's been moving at a very fast pace, lots of updates. What's the latest from Rivers State?
Yeah, good afternoon. We were here on time at 10 o'clock, but the announcement of results began at about 10:30 or to 11, thereabout. Now, out of 6 that were postponed to today, 4 have been announced already, and it is still the same story. The People's Democratic Party widening the margin of lead in Rivers State, talking about the governorship election. Okay, we have results for Obiakpo, Degema, Port Harcourt, and Akoko-Toro. 2 are still left. That is Asari-Toro local government area and Ahoda West local government area. But the last one, Ahoda West, is shrouded in uncertainty if it will be announced today, because there are certain developments in that local government area.
And Victor, can you tell us more about those developments that you just touched on?
Okay, there were cases of reported violence in Akume and other parts of Ahoda West local government area of Rivers State. So that we haven't gotten a clear picture yet. That was the reason I said earlier that it is shrouded in uncertainty. But besides that, we still await the results from Asari-Toro local government area. Of course, Asari-Toro local government area and Ward 16 of Unit 9 in Obuama of Degema local government area were concluded yesterday, where we've gotten results for Degema, Port Harcourt, Obiakpo, and the others, but just 2 left, Asari-Toro and Ahoda West local government area, because of reported cases of violence and alleged irregularities. But as the day wears on, we'll get details of what actually transpired. If the results will be announced today, talking about Ahoda West, we'll still get the details, because Collation has stopped briefly to reconvene at 2 p.m. But as it stands now, the man from Opobo Nkoro, that is Siminalayi Fubara of the People's Democratic Party, has a wide margin of lead like this. Whatever that means, that's the truth.
Well, I think the polling agent from, I think it was the APC or one of the other parties, stood up and said that the election should be cancelled. They said the election should be cancelled, that it was widespread violence. And according to what they're alleging, that margin that you're using to widen your arms is because of that event. So as any word from INEC, because agents are calling for the election to be cancelled. So I'm redone again. He said, cancel the election, let's all go home. Let's come back tomorrow another time and redo the election. Any word from INEC on that at all?
Well, not much from the Independent National Electoral Commission. The statement has always been the same, that all results would come in. The agents of the political parties will state their grievances, and of course, they will look into it. If you know what that means, look into it, you might be looking forever. But they are trying to say that it is not within their rights to cancel any election results except they have gone through it. Review, if you like, was what the INEC has said. So it's typical of the sights and sounds of a collation center when some persons could be rejoicing, others will be complaining, either with genuine or reasons that are not genuine enough. Whatever it is for the INEC to determine if there would be a cancellation. But do I see that happening? I don't think so.
Obete, we're glad to have you on the ground there. I guess we'll follow. River State has to be one of the most interesting spots there. But again, let's now continue our election coverage as we bring in public affairs analyst Adeniyi Kunnu, who is here with us in our Lagos studio, and the public policy analyst Sesugh Akume, who is standing by in the Abuja studio. Good to have you both with us. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, gentlemen and ladies. Thank you very much. Yes, please. Yes, good afternoon.
So, let's start with Rivers.
Yes,
Rivers is always a flashpoint. Election in, election out. We heard the words from Rotimi Amaechi. And what do you make of it all?
In the first place, let's talk about the topography of Rivers. I've been there, the nooks and crannies of Rivers at some point. Ahoda has two water bodies, the brackish water from the creeks, and of course the fresh water that takes you to Onitsha. It therefore means that anybody committing crime can either use the brackish water and make away, or use the water that takes you to Onitsha. So the topography of Ahoda is unique. In fact, if one checks the history of the nation's civil war, lots of things happened there, and that is just for the war. But quite frankly, the topography allows for that. But you're talking about a state that actually, for the past 10, 12 years, has consistently generated in excess of about $25 billion US, you know, in terms of its revenue, only second to Lagos.
Right.
So you have to follow the money, as they say, because that money is always part of it. In fact, if you look at some of the local governments in Rivers State, the kind of money generated, because it's an oil-producing state, actually carpets a lot of money generated by some states in the north. So always remember that that is the key issue. Second, let's look at what Amaechi has been saying. Amaechi, to me, sounded very funny. In the first place, I've not heard or read that he has relinquished his membership of the APC. So all of the issues raised are quite heavy. And for a man who served the same administration for over 6 to 7 years as a minister and comes out to make such statements, Amaechi is no small fry when you talk about the nation's politics. Then I think he shouldn't be saying that. Rather, he should look inwards and tell the people who are with him organizing the election that has been full of infractions to actually address it. So I think that for Rivers State, we really have not heard the last. The call for the cancellation of the election, to me, may not be what we see anytime soon. Of course, those who have lost will go to court. But this is not the first time that people will call that they should cancel an election. But moving forward, understand that the people who are there also have the power, one way or the other, and also have, you know, how they present their evidence in the court of law and are able to more or less, you know, override all of those issues. But ultimately, what are the lessons for us, quite frankly? This is the year 2023. And one would have expected, not just because about 305 billion naira had been earmarked for this election, is the fact that they will take examples from certain things we do. There are lessons learned from what we do. So I have to say that there is always money in the details. So for instance now, when you're talking about some wiki,
we actually have Rivers economic.
Okay, fantastic.
So let's keep going.
I'm simply saying that when you talk about the battlegrounds in this election, Lagos, for instance, is a battleground. Money is in the detail.
Oh yes.
You're talking about, you know, the GDP of the country in excess of $420 billion US, and Lagos accounts for 10% of that. Everybody will fight to keep that. You're talking about an Akwa Ibom. So when you are talking about key states where the elections have not gone well, you only need to take a cup of water and what are the metrics of the state. You have to look at what is the gross development index in those respective states. What is the state of insecurity in those states? Despite the political problems in Rivers, Rivers State is still relatively peaceful compared to other states in the north where you practically cannot do businesses in these times. And if you also look at the analysis of places where there have been incremental violence of season elections, there are states riddled by poverty, and there are states that some companies, from what we said before the cameras came on, are even making more money than some states. Yet this state continue to take chunk as big as Kunnu is. If we are to do a proper measurement of its capacity for growth and development and the financials, I think we have to keep Kunnu way below Kaduna. And the reinvention of Kaduna, actually around 2 years ago, the Kaduna investment that Governor Nasir El-Rufai has consistently pushed has allowed the state to earn in excess of about $2 billion US in addition to what it earns. So when we talk about election, people just think it's about people want to take power. people are after the core of it, and that is the money. So if you check this election, and you do a comparative analysis of places where violence has been high, it is either the state makes so much money or there are mineral resources that people are dying to secure in this state. Let's look at Zamfara, for instance. About 3 years ago, they told us a lie that there's a commercial exploration or mining of gold in Zamfara. Excuse me, I have lived in the north. I have worked in the north at some point. Zamfara gold has been explored long before this time. More or less like having illegal mining. It has been on. And that is what you do not touch as a city, because it's on what? The exclusive list. So when we talk about the things happening in places where it seems as if people are ready to die and kill for certain positions, it is not just about occupying the seat of power. It is the fact that there is money in the detail. And until we begin to see the bigger picture, we're still learners here.
Thank you so much. Well, we also have with us, of course, in our Abuja studio, that's public policy analyst, that's Sesugh Akume, who is standing by in Abuja. Thank you so much for your patience. Of course, you've been listening to what we've been talking about here in studio. I'm going by what was mentioned earlier about the statements made by Rotimi Amaechi. I'd just like to, look at the implications of the statement that he made. On the headlines of this day newspaper, we know that the Atiku camp is basically saying, I'm just going to read it, that this revelation confirms that INEC is in the ruling party's candidates' pockets. That's the allegation that's being made as a result of the statements that were made by Rotimi Amaechi. So I'm just wondering, when you look at the part where it says this is a systematic capture by the president-elect to capture the police, INEC, and the judiciary, what does this say to you?
The facts speak for themselves. The facts speak for themselves. INEC and Mahmoud Yakubu should be ashamed of themselves, and I hold them in particular responsible for the sham of election we've had in 2023 and for disappointing their country. For me, it's treasonous what they did. That's Mahmoud Yakubu particularly, and INEC and the security services. And I agree 100% with what Rotimi Amaechi said. I may not like him as a person, I may not like his politics, but what he said on this issue is 100% correct. I may also have issues with the fact that he didn't say so earlier. He had to say so now that he's on the losing side, but that's a different issue altogether. But what's most important is let's look at the facts. INEC has been violating its own laws before the election, during the election, and after the election. And everything lies on INEC when you look at this, everything we're talking about here. And I'm constrained to disagree with my colleague who just spoke on all counts. It doesn't matter what the political economy is and why people strive to do whatever they do and go to whatever length to do. We have laws. If we could only stick to the laws and do what the law says and hold people accountable for what they're supposed to do, then we wouldn't be having what's going on now and the embarrassment we've been facing. Let's look at what INEC did, violating its own laws before the elections. The law is very explicit in the Electoral Act. It said you have there's specific days whereby, number of days whereby parties are supposed to submit their election, their membership registers. There's a particular number of days by which parties were supposed to notify INEC of their own primaries. Many of the parties didn't do this. For instance, APC and PDP in particular did not do this. They violated it. And when you go to court, it's the same INEC that will go to court to defend those same parties for violating what is expressly stated in the law. That's INEC violating the Electoral Act itself before the elections. During the elections, INEC, many of the ad hoc staff and many of the staff who were deployed to the polling units were not the ones who underwent the training. There were different sets of people who underwent the training on how to use the beavers, how to do this and that, and the list of the people who came out after the training, the people who were going for the elections, were different sets of people altogether. What happens is politicians buy INEC officials at the state level, at different levels, and they have their own candidates who are going to be polling officers, assistant polling officers, and so on. That's part of how the thing is a mess. And look at the provisions of the law with regard to uploading the results. They're supposed to be uploaded from the polling units. As a matter of fact, the wording of the Electoral Act is explicit. It didn't say transmit results, transfer results. It said transmit, which means in transmission, you have to send and the other side gets it. That's when it becomes a transmission, not just a transfer. And the law was explicit about that. For goodness sake, we'll be fighting about the Electoral Act from time immemorial until February last year. It was passed into law and signed, passed and signed into law, finally. And everybody was excited and we had hopes, and INEC kept giving promises and so on about electronic transmission, about IREV, about BVAS. And when it came to the time, INEC shut down its own servers and admitted to doing so. As a matter of fact, by November last year, INEC started flying the kite and saying there were people who tried to attack their servers, who tried to do this. What's the meaning of that? And so did they get the people who tried to attack their servers? Who did that? Did they do anything about it? Nothing. Only for them to shut down their servers. I'm talking about the elections that I held on the 25th particularly. And results couldn't be uploaded. That's INEC violating its own laws. And when you look at the results that have been published, you see what the agents have, what the respective situation rooms have as evidence from what happened at the polling units. It's different from what is uploaded on the IREF. Who did that? It's the same INEC. So where I would what I would say is I don't blame the political parties. I don't say PDP stole elections or APC stole elections. It's INEC, because you can't steal elections without the connivance, active connivance of INEC. And INEC did this, and it's on Mahmoud Yakubu and INEC. I consider it to be treasonous. Look at the vitriolic comments that have been coming from people doing ethnic baiting and detention everywhere. It's still on INEC, because Section 92 of the Electoral Act prohibits such actions. It prohibits words that are going to cause disaffection, that undermine people, and so on and so forth. But look at the same law says that it's INEC that is supposed to prosecute people who do those offenses. How many has INEC prosecuted? None. So what does that tell us? So it all starts and comes back to INEC, and I'm quite ashamed about the turnout and how the whole thing went about, the enormous amount of money that went into doing this, the time invested, the hope invested, and also what it portends for in the near future. It's just very discouraging.
All right, let's bring the conversation back into studio with Adeniyi Kunnu. Thank you so much for those points. Now, what is being brought up here is an accountability issue. Who does INEC answer to? Where does the buck stop? Especially when we look at the points that you raised earlier, where we look at an election as a splitting of the national cake, so to speak. Please. Now, normally in international political economics, we speak of the rotation of elites. However, what we see in Nigeria seems to be more of a recycling of elites. You look at somebody like a Rotimi Amechi, it's a recycling of the same elites. It's not a rotation of new elites coming in to replace the old ones. So given that it's the same people in the system, just in different colors and different garments, who is INEC accountable to? Because it doesn't seem to be the Nigerian citizens.
Well, it doesn't seem, but in reality, the Constitution has not changed that stipulation. INEC is accountable to the people as the Constitution of the country gives it its mandate. But what is instructive here, that the same INEC that organized the election, where people have had complaints, is the same INEC that organized the election, where people have been celebrating. The Labour Party has had its complaint, but the reality is the Labour Party, a presidential candidate, has also celebrated people who obviously have been elected into federal assemblies. The PDP has had its complaints, but I've seen PDP leaders being celebrated, especially at the federal assemblies. So the APC has also lost some places, but of course I've seen the APC celebrate with those that have won the federal assemblies. This is the logic the world over. When they held the House of Reps elections that's in the US, that's I think in November of last year, many people as civilized as the US is were also not happy. As much as they did not complain regarding what the umpire did, they also complained about certain things that didn't go well regarding how people campaigned, certain things that were overlooked maybe by monitoring agencies. So I'm saying here that election issues are not peculiar to us here. It's a universal, a global issue. It is just that the percentile seem to be higher. But I also want us to be very careful, because when a key figure, and that is why when leadership places you in certain positions, even in the light of understanding certain realities, you know how to present those realities. I want to re-emphasize that the cries of Amechi perhaps was as a result of being disappointed, because in Rivers State, maybe they expected maybe the electoral umpire to do the bidding of the APC, and he didn't do that. And that's why he brought out the words that at some point when some week was the Minister of State for Education, Mahmoud Yakub was the Executive Secretary of Church Fund. The reality is, whatever position you hold, the fact that you occupy the INEC chairmanship position is always by appointment. And if you work within government, I have worked in civil service before I went to the private sector, and you could be redeployed anywhere. So I'm saying here that perhaps the reason Amechi is crying war was simply because in that state, yes please, it was because in that state, somebody perhaps understands the dynamics better than himself. So let us know this. INEC is accountable to the people, to Nigeria, as stipulated in the Constitution. And I need us to understand this, because even the leaders and the things they say right now could incite other people. And immediately it gets to the point where there's breakdown of law and order, the government that is still in power will unleash the dragon to keep sanity in the state. And that is what we don't want to get to. So for INEC, are there documented and realistic infractions? Yes. Was the process seen through as it should? I doubt it, because if it was, we wouldn't have having this kind of thing. But of course, let's understand the respective agencies involved in this election. I've told people who care to listen. The Constitution tells INEC, you are the leader or the team lead in this election. You give other supporting agencies the role that you want them to play. So the police, INEC, according to records, will tell the police, this is where I need you. And that is why close to where they vote, nobody takes ammunition there. That is part of the process. So you have to ask the question, why is it that the police, in light of all these things, appears to be subordinated to thuggery? You need to ask a question. So we've moved the conversation to where it is now, the executive arm of government. The president is the leader of the armed forces in the entire country. What is the instruction given first by the IG? What is the response of the IG? Because when we're talking about Professor Mahmoud Yakub, he's handicapped. He can give instruction. But there is another indication somewhere, which is that there's an authority that gives instruction regarding how security operatives actually work. So you find videos everywhere, and certain reports given, even some of the reports that we have seen on your own platform, where you see a policeman was sleeping and almost fell at a polling center. And that is a reality.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kunnu, I don't want to interrupt you, but so what's within INEC's jurisdiction, yes, however, is to ensure that polls are still held in those places, that those people are not suppressed, yes, or disenfranchised. However, we're seeing a trend where those violent places are not getting a repeat election.
Let me say this. Quite frankly, INEC is the only organization that can tell you certain reasons why polls will maybe be postponed, be conducted again. And don't forget, we don't write reports for INEC. We only read reports as provided to the media or as provided on public platforms. So when INEC tells you that an election will not be conducted at another place, then you have to ask, before jumping into conclusion, what report did the presiding officer, did the collation officer bring? I was watching what the people in Rivers State were doing yesterday, and when the political party agents were raising issues with the report or the results being declared, the person that was more or less like the state collation officer was telling them that whilst he has listened to what they have said, but there's a report before him and his responsibility is to admit what has been brought by the agencies designated to do that. And I think that we should understand that the process of this election is what we really need to identify. For instance, the person who brings the result from the respective polling units, the presiding officers and all of that, what reports did they put together? Because if we are looking at Mahmoud Yakub, it cannot be everywhere. So the state collation officer the presiding officers, the ad hoc staff? What are the things that these people are bringing into the platform? What have they brought? So that is what we need to put our eyes on. At times we look at the president, as we've always said, what's happening in the state, what's happening in the local government. The same way with INEC. Professor Mahmoud Yakubu said that these are the issues, and he will not act outside of the report he has been given. And I think that that is where even the citizens must begin to initiate bills or documents that are enough for us to address this issue. Let me say this. The things we have found as infractions in this election is a true reflection of what is happening in the entire Nigerian system. The election issues are a microcosm of what we have in the national body.
I want to quickly bring in Mr. Sesugh Akume in just a moment. Sesugh, we are throwing up some figures there on, again, the metrics in Rivers. For example, we're talking about Wike as a former Minister of State for Education. Education spend per capita in Rivers is just 8,000 naira, 8,360 naira per person. Health is 1,607. Rivers State has one of the highest rates of unemployment in the country at 41%. If you add in underemployment, I think it's almost 6 to 8 out of 10 Rivers residents is not overqualified for their job, or they have no job. What are the people of Rivers getting out of all this when you think about the leadership in that state and what the next governor, whoever comes out of this turmoil, is going to get? What are the people of Rivers getting? Sesugh?
The people of Rivers, just like the people of most oil-producing states and the rest of Nigeria, are shortchanged. They are cheated, and one way we have been deceived is through what politicians do. They say they're commissioning projects. That's what everybody does to keep their activity. They keep doing activities, commissioning one project or the other. Every day you're in the media commissioning one project or the other, and that's what people use to measure governance. But it's just pure deceit. What we should be looking at are the metrics just shown here. What is the quality of life of the people? I mean, what's like what you said? I mean, how's the unemployment, or how much is the government spending on health, on education? In summary, what's the quality of life? Has the quality of life of the individual improved over the past years? I doubt that a lot. So when people talk about what is involved here is about the money and that, I'm asking what money? The money that goes to who? The money that goes to the politician's pocket, or the ones that go into improving the lives of the people? Because the lives of people don't get improved at the end of the day, and there is thuggery and insecurity and suppression all over again. Back to what the main discussion we're talking about. There are agencies that within our system, within systems of governance, that are regulators. They are regulators because they're the ones who are supposed to set the tone for how the system operates. It's just like you're baking and you mix the dough and you're putting in yeast in the dough. The yeast is supposed to change the dough so that you can now use it to bake. So you don't tell me that because the yeast is corrupted, so it cannot do its function to have effect on the dough so that you can bake. So what's the use of the yeast? That's the point I'm making. The point is, if INEC is a microcosm of Nigeria and shows the dysfunction of Nigeria, then what's the use of INEC? Why did you spend so much money? Why did we invest so much emotions, time, hope, and all of that? So where INEC has failed, where Mahmoud Yakubu has failed, where he has shown compromise, where he has shown that he's not a just arbiter, it needs to be called out and stated as what it is. The question was asked, who is INEC accountable to? INEC is accountable. INEC hasn't shown that it's accountable to Nigerians. Mahmoud Yakubu hasn't shown that it's accountable to Nigerians. And by the way, I'm indemnifying Arise News for all I'm saying. My comments and opinions are 100% mine. I'm taking 100% responsibility for them. So NBC need not come after Arise News for having an opinion that doesn't go with the government. But this is a fact. Yes. No. Let's be frank about that. So come for me. I can give you my address to serve court papers or whatsoever. Come for me. Don't leave Arise News alone. So there have been numerous failures. I've outlined so many of them, including like the vitriolic comments. It's INEC that should do the suing. How many people have face the consequence for the failures, numerous failures that we've outlined? None so far that I know. When will it happen? I don't know. And so it still has to go back to somebody because the ball has to fall on somebody's desk. So when you're talking about security forces taking orders from the president and so on and so forth, I still don't get it, because the role that INEC should have played, that should have brought confidence in the system, it did not play it. It's not playing it. It doesn't show any inclination of playing it. And I'm also saying from my own experience that even when you go to court, INEC is still the one coming to fight, to defend those who offended the Electoral Act. So how can this ever be justified? And because we need to call a spade and situate issues precisely where they lie before we can make any progress. We can't be talking about 2019 and what goes, 2023 and what goes on henceforth. We can't be talking about what goes about henceforth, because right now there's so much uncertainty. Look at the people calling for a cancellation of elections. I don't agree, by the way, that when some people win, you say, yes, you celebrated when you won, but when you lost, you said no. It is possible for someone to lose an election and agree that indeed I did lose. On Arise News here the other day was the presidential candidate of the SDP, was asked in plain terms, did you win or you lost? He said he lost. He did not win. But were there irregularities? Yes, there were. So it's not, I didn't lose because there were irregularities, but there were irregularities. That's the point I'm making. So the point is, is it possible for someone to lose having played the game according to the rules, and they lost, and they can now call their opponent and say, you indeed won, and I wish you the best? It's very possible. I don't buy into this soft bigotry of low expectations, as George W. Bush called it, whereby we think Nigeria can operate by very low standards and no standards, and it's okay, because, and then we cite examples around the world where there were irregularities or things that didn't go the way they should. Nobody violates electoral laws anywhere else around the world that I know with the impunity INEC did and keeps a straight face. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't go about that way.
Thank you so much for your insightful analysis. Public policy analyst Sesugh Akume, thank you so much for joining us on this special coverage of Nigeria Decides. We appreciate your time.
All right, I think we're going to continue with Adeniyi Kunnu. Now, you contested in Benue State, I think, for the ADC. Is that correct?
The ADC contested.
Okay. Can you, as far as the process, can you give us, comparing that to what we're seeing now, better or worse?
Well, I have to say that every political party comes under the guidelines of INEC, which is very key here. And because the political parties cannot act, ultra-vires, they have to stay within what they have to stay within, which is follow the guidelines of INEC. But what is key is this. At the levels of political party themselves, how much of the processes have they respected? Because if you're talking about the mammoth problem that we have, it comes from the little or the bits and pieces that people didn't attend to. Let's first of all examine the primaries of the parties. Because at times, you're talking about a country where we're blaming INEC, but certain persons benefited from a process that was not thorough. If you look at the process from which the current Senate President emerged, Ahmed Lawan, you find out that it is one of the most dubious and questionable process in this country. And they have to open up and tell us that because it was an aspirant and it was not a candidate, but what did the rule book tell us? That is one part of the conversation. If you move away to some places where, even at the place where they were doing the primaries, people were practically campaigning, and some people were saying they are giving their vote to certain persons, it is also part of the problem. So when people benefit from a process and the process wasn't thorough, they don't complain. But when the process affects them, they'll complain. Let's look at Professor Mahmoud Jega's tenure.
Respectfully, Mr. Kunnu,
yes,
tell us about your own experience.
Your experience. No, I only spoke in my capacity. I spoke in my capacity as a presidential candidate back then for somebody. That was what I did. And I mentioned, as a matter of fact, part of the reason why eventually I had to step out was when I found out that certain processes were not being followed, and it has taken me years to build my reputation, I stepped out of that circle. Because I won't be on international TV as yours right now and be speaking if I had this baggage. People didn't respect processes. And they had to go to court over leadership issues. And I was speaking for the topmost person in the party. And I looked at the reputation it has taken me years to build, and I looked at the foible in the party, and that prompted me to make a difficult decision to step away. Because that is key. Immediately you find out that the people within are not respecting the process that they set in place, the best bet is to step out. And I must say this very clearly to the world, that if anything works in any country of the world that we visit often and want to transfer our families to, it's because they respect processes. Oftentimes it's not about the outcome, it's about the process. When the process is thorough and the process is proper, even if the outcome doesn't favor people, they are satisfied that the process was seen through. What's the process, for instance, through which you employ your national team coach for football and your own Shoaibu Amadu and Stephen Keshi up to their days of death? It's a process that wasn't seen through. The same thing comes into politics. The same thing goes into education. You brought up the figures of Rivers. Rivers is supposed to reflect what a lot of places in Texas reflect. Rivers is supposed to reflect what the Dubai actually reflects. Rivers is supposed to reflect what oil-producing nations reflect. Let me say this. One of the environmentally degraded places in this country with economic implications is Rivers. Soot goes into people's home. People are not even discussing that. We're talking about the fact that education. A lot of people in the next 15, 20 years will be coming up with serious respiratory problems because of the soot problems in Rivers. People are not looking at the implication of that on taxpayers' money, on the economy of Rivers, on those who should fall within the age bracket of active citizens that are adding to the economy. Excuse me when I say follow the money. I'm not talking about the monies made alone. I'm talking about the monies taken out of the coffers of government that's not accounted for. So let's look at it for instance. We're talking about a particular figure churned out the last time. The National Bureau of Statistics told us that by December, the growth rate of the economy fell from 3.40 to 3.1. Oftentimes when we call figures, Rotus, people don't understand that when you churn out figures on a business program at times, people need to listen carefully. Right. Our lives are in figures. I was 18 at some point. I'm over 40 right now. I'll be over 60 at some point. What's the implication of the progression of my years? How much can I add to the economy? How much can I make as I get older? What do I have in my savings? What's the implication on my health, on the life of my wife, the life of my children? We just gloss over these things. You look at pensioners, for instance. There is no explanation why any pensioner should be owed. Now, people are not creating a nexus between pensioners owed and the level of theft in civil service. My father worked in civil service before he died. This country owes my father. If I worked in civil service and rights, I will likely steal because I like to take what the country didn't give my father. What's the implication of that action on the patriotic mindset that we intend to build, Rotos? So when we talk about, for instance, pensioners that are old and their children are young and active, and they see how their parents have given so much for this country, let's say about 100, 50 could say we're going to steal. For any money taken out of the coffers, there's a subtraction from the value that should have been added to build the economy. Perhaps the good roads that we would have used so that we don't change our tires too often. Maybe, for instance, use the Toyota Camry that you have to change your timing belt. When you get into potholes, it cuts. People don't understand that you add it here, you subtract it here. Everything is an amalgamation of real issues that we're not looking at.
Fair point.
So, quite frankly, when we talk about governance and politics, you cannot have a dumb skull in the smallest office. As you're thinking leadership, you are thinking economy, you are thinking social fabric, you are thinking empathy, and you are thinking introspection. Excuse me, people, let's talk again.
We have to jump to Kaduna. First, great point. Our life is in figures. Our life is in figures. Let's go to Kaduna. The Collation Center is counting the votes there right now.
I should go ahead. Number of registered voters, cumulative, 24713. 413, sorry. 413. 247-413. Okay. Number of accredited voters, 100,483. Party results. AA 05. ADC 44. ADC 44. ADP 75. 75. APC 45823. 45823. APGA 271. APM 22. APP 20. LP 4321. 4321. NNPP 1515. 1515. NRM 5151. PDP 46363. 46363. PRP 73. SDP 06. YPP 28. Total valid votes 98617. 98617. Rejected votes 1411. 1411. Total votes cast 100028. 100028.
Thank you, Prof. Any incidents?
Yes, sir. We have issues of cancellations with Ramin Kura in one polling unit. And then we have in Saminaka is 4 in Saminaka.
Have you completed the Form EC 40G1?
Yes, I have them here.
Okay, thank you.
They're here.
Okay. And do you have any from EC 40H? Disability?
No.
Thank you. Any comment on this? Okay. Can someone give me the mic, please?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Adeniyi and the Kaduna State Coalition agent for PDP in this election. All protocols duly observed. So this Lere result is full of alteration, wrong figures, and what have you. And as you can see, the results are not even complete, and it's contrary to the information we collected from our returning agents at the local government. And I want to see the Form 40M EC 8B of this local government, so that we tally it, so that we will see the wrong entry that have been made so far, so as to prove the veracity of this. Thank you very much.
You have your own copy of the EC40, I mean EC...
They didn't give it. They didn't release it to our people. They didn't release it to our people. That was the same thing I was raising yesterday.
No.
Remember?
There are two different issues, sir. The issue of gubernatorial election is different from the issue of state constituency election. As far as we are concerned, we don't have any issue with the result of the state governorship election. Every one of the agents there signed and collected his copy.
Yes.
So where do you have the problem? The state assembly elections?
State assembly elections.
That's why you have the problem?
That's why we contacted the commission and provided us with the result sheet from polling unit directly from the south, which they have done so, and we went through with the agent, all of them. After concluding the whole process, then the PPP agent said that he will not sign.
Okay, that is for the state assembly election.
For the state assembly.
So we don't have any problem with the state assembly election, and this is not the venue for the collation of state assembly elections.
Yes. I think I know what I'm saying, and I'm not talking about state assembly election. I'm talking about gubernatorial election. Okay? I think there's no harm in them providing the necessary document if they actually did their work very well. It is okay, fine.
Do you have
it's a concern that we've raised, you know? So let's see.
The basis of what you are saying perhaps is to make a comparative analysis. What they have brought and what you have. But you can only do that comparison if you have a copy of what we have. Because any other information that is extraneous to what the coalition officer imputed into the ECAP cannot be accepted. And I'm wondering, you are claiming that they did not give you a copy.
Yes.
While they are saying that they gave your agency a copy.
They said that my agent said they didn't give him a copy. They didn't give him a copy. At what level?
Why?
Okay? That's what we are talking about. They didn't give them
Why the agent?
Our agents are not allowed to enter here.
All the agents, all the watch, one copy given to them.
Yes. They're not allowed to enter. And that's why we keep raising this concern.
No, what do I say is, but from the, have they signed?
They have signed.
They have
So
signed.
check it originally. If their agent signs, then we are out with that.
They have signed.
Yes. If their agent signs, then we are out with it.
Okay, state assembly.
They
signed governorship. They received you the copy. Amma an state assembly da aka gama su rike sa ka ta hada mu aiki mu muke tsakani da Allah ka tambaye su
malam ne matsalar ba ka da
don't take care about
yes I'm a professor.
Yes, I do the friend
Madam, I go by empirical facts. Empirical facts.
Let me see.
They are not the same issue.
Yes, sign. The agent signed. Okay, that's. Your agent have signed here.
Yes, I saw the signature of the agent. So what I think about the word collation agents. That's what I'm talking about.
You see, we are not here. That's what you should have raised at that collation center.
They say when they raised it, they ignored them.
No.
That's what I want you to understand.
If you really had issues, why did your agent sign at the level that they signed? He should not have signed. He should have signed. He should have ignored and said, no, I'm not signing. He should have done. But he signed. He acquiesces to what happened at the lower level, at the higher level. Thank you. Next. Yeah, okay.
Can I go?
Thank you. Yes. So, operation, please.
Nice signing.
Nice signing.
Sunan duka. Nice signing. Na yi duka. Wanda ba enough space na yi LSA. That's my name. Like Sandra Adam.
TG din kufa.
Da sunan. Me za wannan?
Ko TG sa.
Wannan a ciki akwai wannan kuma. Then wannan gashi saminaka. Nothing else here.
Madam, this is for the governorship election?
Yes.
Okay. It's 40G1 you will use, madam. Not this one. Madam, you will join him. They will give you fresh form to copy. It's not, you copied on the wrong form.
Madam. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, the local government area. Please, everybody should come forward.
Good afternoon, sir. All properly observed. My name is Adeniyi, Electoral local government.
I stand on the existing protocol. I am Professor Denju Masale Yawas of the Department of Mechanical Engineering, ABU Zaria, the local government collation officer. Birinungwari local government area. I want to
start with the RAs. How many RAs do you have?
We have 11 RAs. And we have a total number of registered voters 132,165. 132,165. Number of accredited voters 42243. 42243. I will now present the votes according to parties. Party AA, we have 05. AA 05. ADC 13. 13. ADP 54. 54. APC 20627. 20627. ABGA 40. 40. APM 21. 21. APP 08. 08. LP 37. 37. NNPP 726. 726. NRM 44. 44. PDP 19954. 19954. PRP 142. 142. SDP 06. 06. YPP 05. 05. Total valid vote 41682. 41682. Rejected vote 534. 534. Total vote cast 42216. 42216. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof.
Yes, sir.
Any incident?
Yes, sir. In Guyam Ward, we have some issues with 4 RAs and 7 polling units. The total number of registered voters there turned out to be 2071, and the total number of PVC collected 236. And why we had to cancel because of insecurity. Yes, sir.
Have you completed from EC40 G1?
Yes, sir. We have everything completed.
Okay. Do you have incident from EC40H?
No, we didn't have that incident.
Okay. Any comment on this result, please? Thank you. Operation, can we please have a check?
Thank you.
Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11. This year, can you sign?
Also in our Abuja studio is the president of the Ready to Lead Africa. God bless Otubore. He joins us now from Abuja as we continue with the collation from Kaduna State. Mr. God bless, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. So what do you make of what you've been seeing unfold since the gubernatorial and State House of Assembly elections on Saturday, Mr. Otubore?
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I mean, it's just been a combination of a lot of issues and factors that I have seen over the couple of, today's Monday, starting from on the 18th of March. We deployed our observers across the 28 states where the governorship elections are happening. As I speak to you right now, currently following the results on my phone with our people at collation centers. Some are reporting huge violence, erupting, the disagreements amongst party agents in terms of final collation numbers that are coming in from the LGA. The fact that there was just very unnecessary violence that was meted at different polling units, different states in the country. And I said yesterday while I was on Arise Television, I got a report from our observer in Akwa Ibom that have said over 10 people have been killed. And apart from Ikotech Mene, where there hasn't been any issue, most other parts of the state had been marred with violence, as well as, a lot of the collation centers stopping for resumption today, which a lot of them have, and some we have just seen Plateau State that has been called, and now we see Kaduna ongoing. But technically and generally, we have taken 2 steps forward as a people, and we've taken 10 steps backward as a people. For some of us, when we came back after delivering the Not Too Young to Run campaign alongside other partners like Yaga Africa and Connected Development and other institutions working across the different parts of the country, we made a commitment that we were going to deliver electoral reforms. And for some of us who gave the last 3 years of our lives to ensure that electoral reforms was done, which is not just amending the act, but it was like just revamping the entire, electoral architecture so that we can have better elections. And to see that this is what we have today, it is absolutely not what we expected. Absolutely not what we expected. Did we take 2 steps forward? We did. Today, people can say, no, collation officer, or the scope, and say, or maybe we say the returning officer, and say, no. This is not what Beavers has transmitted. this is, and then we can disagree because we now have that technology to be able to say, this is not what we have. That is the 2 steps we've taken. But that you would also disenfranchise people, that you would bring thugs to the place of voting again, that you would kill people because of elections, that we cannot even stop a process that has been seen publicly as not meeting its own guidelines, is 10 steps backwards. So what we've seen, what we've discovered is terrible, it's painful, and I think it is just a sad day for democracy, a sad period for democracy right now. But I always say to Nigerians and say to young people that democracy is not a dash, it's not a 100-meter dash. Neither is it a marathon, it's not a marathon. It is a way of life. Other generations that have come, they've done what they could do. It is incumbent on us to do what we must now do to preserve, protect, and promote democracy. However, I need to say this. What I've also seen in the last 2 days is a blatant disregard for what holds us together and what unites us. It is the wanton peddling of tribal sentiments by those who we once called leaders and those who would eventually serve us, most likely maybe in the next couple of weeks and years to come. It is disgraceful, it is shameful, and I'm pointing to all of them. If they're watching, you have to stop it. The elections have come and gone. It's still ongoing in some states. For those of you that have been declared winners, you know what winners do across the world. Winners reach out, mend defenses. That is how we are as human beings. When we fight, of course, we say things that we don't like. We say a lot of things just to get ahead. But once you get there, the goal is to reach out and bring people together, but to double down on the same thing that you use as your strategy to get to where you want to go, that's dangerous. Rwanda and the crisis of the Tutsi and the Hutsi clearly is not forgotten so quickly by a lot of us. So I'm saying in the last 2 days, there's been a combination of a lot of things.
Thank you so much, Mr. Otubere. Mr. Kunnu, let me bring you back in. This issue of violence, ballot box snatching, right? How do we overcome that? Do we depend on the law, or can technology take us out of this? We did a special report. The Constitution does not allow for voting by mobile phones or voting electronically. But if I can use my mobile phone to take money out of my account, and I can't take money out of Vimba's account or Cynthia's account, and that is secure, is there no way where Nigeria can chart a path towards electronically voting that allows us to get away from these violent acts? Because at some point, technology has to be able to save us to where election after election, these thugs and violent people continue to snatch these ballot boxes and prevent people from voting.
Well, when Estonia started this electronic voting in 2007, being the first country to have done that digitally, people celebrated. But Estonia is just over 1 million in population. Although Estonia is bigger than Lagos, about 49,000 plus in terms of the square kilometers, Estonia. Now, the dynamics are different in a society where the connection with regard to data and all of that is not uniform. There are places you go in Nigeria, you will not be able to use your phone for as long as you are there. You can't go ahead and recommend electronic voting for this. Some topographies of this country, if you go to some places in Edo, the topography will shut you out of every connection, just like Edo in the south. We're not talking about the interiors of the north. It means, therefore, that if we cannot go full digital regarding voting, what is our investment on human beings to make them understand that you do not damage your own? The reality is, the countries where people vote, India has over 800 political parties, in excess of 1 billion in population. Yet the level of violence we see in a country that is over 200 million is more than what we hear in India. Although the parties in India do not all go into wanting to become the prime minister or bring the prime minister out, some are meant for the provinces or region. But having said that, what is the investment or the premium on the life of the average Nigerian by governments to make such individuals become people who value that which is theirs and not destroyed? The thugs we see, were giving birth to, and their mothers felt the pains that my mother felt when they gave birth to the children. The same pain, the same 9 months. You have to talk about the importance of nurture and the role of the state towards ensuring that people are properly nurtured to value their own. Americans can sew their underwears with their flag. How many of us can use the Nigerian flag to sew underwear? It's about patriotism. I've gone to that level because I've seen it over there, especially during the July 4th celebrations. I'm saying here that if we must get out of these disgraceful experiences, we have to first of all understand that paying attention to the human beings who do not have sources of livelihood, who are on the streets, remains very germane to the success of the election. If I taught my children, as I've always done, the importance of valuing their life first and not contributing to the things that subtract from what a nation offers and the impression it creates, then I think that others doing that will have an aggregate of those who are impacting rather than subtracting from the nation's values. So elections are also the people who steal or who are corrupt. They come from some homes. They agree with certain values or evolve values over time by virtue of their socio-cultural acculturation. So what first is the role of the parents in the values you deposit that will make your child, for instance, because at times we want to ridicule that part. But everything begins with the nature, the kind of parenting you give people. I will not kill anybody. I will not encourage anybody within my social circle to kill. Some people will speak about killing another person and nobody blinks. Let's look at the value placed on people's life. For instance, we've had violence in some parts of this country where people just kill you whenever there's violence and they walk away. What nurturing have they had apart from the home? What's your religious acculturation? What's your social acculturation? What's your political sensitization? Because if you also talk about politics, tell me why history is not made compulsory. At the same time, we don't even have a unified history. Even the histories of our civil war that should have been unified. I've read what's written by Northerners, Southerners, everything. Different accounts of the war from perspective. We don't have one.
Kigali has a museum for the Civil
saying.
War, yeah.
But even the museum in Abia is thought to be the museum that belongs to Biafra, not the Nigerian museum. So I'm saying that if we must evolve systems, we cannot take away that part of nurture of the individual that eventually grow up and become the thug that don't let us. People who steal are from homes. They were nurtured or socially acculturated into that consciousness that when you take by force from somebody, it can become your own and you walk away. The same people will be hired by those who need them to participate in stealing ballot boxes in the glare of day, and they feel there's nothing wrong with it. Those are humans, also part of the society. So what is the provision first for those who are talking about out-of-school children? We're talking about, in excess of about 30 million right now.
20 million.
The
number is not 20
million right now.
Yeah.
Now, when we're talking about 20 million out-of-school children, that is more than the population of Serbia, Montenegro, Croatia, put together. There is no way you can have such number and you expect that in the next 15, 20 years, they don't become gangs that are hired to kill. Because in the first place, people have also mistaken the fact that when you get education, you don't get education because you want to earn. You get, first of all, so that you'll be reinvented. The process of the first 6 years of your education helps you to know how to interface with global ideas. That's why we can read. When you read, you're able to penetrate ideas of others. When you get to secondary level, what does it do? It helps you build social capital. How do you relate with people? When you get to the university, you are exposed to the world beyond social capital. You have to be responsible for yourself. How do you manage yourself? How do you build economies? When you leave that particular, the postgraduate level now tells you becoming masters of disciplines. How are you able to interface with other people? Such that having acquired that competency, you're able to use it, then you create pivots that enables global impact. And when you get a PhD, you assume a position where you're able to look at it and say, now that I am here, how can I build respective agencies that can become equally acculturated so that we can have an aggregate of those who are champions in their institution? People don't understand. This analysis is key. And you cannot, I must emphasize again, have a president, a governor, who cannot have introspections that create dimensions of impact for the evolution of this nonsense that is everywhere so that we can have a country. Excuse me, no matter how we're educated, Rotus, the average thug can make a waste of all you acquired all your life in 1 second. And that's what we should not do.
Okay, let's bring it. God bless Otubere. Ready to lead. We've heard what Mr. Kunnu has said about education and education, in particular in Nigeria. When organizations for you, God bless Otubere, ready to lead Africa. What are you doing with respect to the education level and unemployment across the continent? Because for every single one of these states that has trouble spots with this election, they've got double-digit inflation, they've got double-digit unemployment, they've got per capita spend on healthcare and education that are under 10,000 naira for each of these states. So what's your position? Should that what organizations like you and other ones should be focusing on so we have less of these violent acts taking place in elections?
I mean, thank you so much for this question. It is germane. I think we touched on it quite a lot earlier on this morning when I was on between 12 a.m. and 1 a.m. And I said to get out of this is not to deploy more troops or get more police, because the act of voting in a democracy is supposed to be the most easiest. It's like, we're trying to select the person that will lead us because we subscribe to the social contract. So for me, I think coming back to brass tack, coming back to where the issue really is where we should be focusing on. And this is what I have suggested. We've got to go back to educating our people in a way that is complete. I'm not talking about just curriculum change. I'm not talking about just infrastructure improvement. I'm not talking about just post-secondary school trainings. I'm not talking about quality education in university alone. I'm talking about a combination of all of these factors. What are the low-hanging fruits? The low-hanging fruits are simple. In the local communities, in our schools, what we have largely today, when you leave the urban areas and you go to the local areas that we call villages or small towns, or even in some urban areas, what you find is still the colonial mentality of education, where they built 6 blocks classrooms without playgrounds, without a basketball court, without a table tennis court, without a lawn tennis court, without a functioning laboratory, without proper hygiene and toilets for kids to play. Now, people say, oh, do we have the monies for that? We absolutely do have the monies for that. The reason I say that is because when you look at the number of abandoned projects and the way we've built schools over the years, it tells you that it's not a problem of not having the resources, it's the idea of using the resources. So these are my first solutions, and this is what Ready to Lead Africa is pushing. We're going to change the way we design our schools. And we're not just going to do that talking. We're going to bring legislation that criminalizes, and I'll say it again, the construction of schools in the old-fashioned way. Because we have now realized that consumption tax alone can fund your secondary basic education system without breaking the bank. And the way we've also seen is that with the trend of communities coming together and creating their own communities that is shielded from whatever is happening in the main society, we are capable of working with communities to ensure that education becomes a community affair. So we're going to change the way we design our schools. It will not be a criminal offense for you to build schools that children don't have playgrounds, they don't have basketball courts, and I'll tell you why we're doing this. We're doing this because we don't want to be spectators at the...
Mr. Otubere, pardon me, pardon my interruption. You can tell us more details about that in a moment, but for now we have to cross live to Kaduna, I believe, where our correspondent Gbenga Ashiru is standing by to give us the latest. Gbenga, good to see you. Over to you. Please tell us what's happening.
Yeah, Cynthia, thank you so much. It's been a long stretch, considering the fact that yesterday INEC in Kaduna decided to postpone the collation after computing 19 out of the 23 local government areas in Kaduna State, remaining 4. So while we were coming here, we thought it was going to be a stroll in the park. But just now, after reading the local government of Benengwari with the one of Kudane left, we were told that INEC is still downloading from the IREF portal, and they want to be sure that all the party agents are there to affirm the figures, so we can just convene here. And the Administrative Secretary of INEC, Mohammed Awal Marshi, has announced that this gathering, the collation gathering, will reconvene at 6 p.m. And that has sent some anxieties in the air. Some people are complaining that that is too far, considering the fact that as at yesterday, 19 local governments have been computed and remaining 4. So we were thinking that within a few hours, it will be a wrap-up and the winner would be announced by the returning officer. But right now, what we can see is INEC is still battling to compute, to download the result from IREV, and they want to be sure that the party agents are there to affirm the figures, and we'll reconvene here at 6 p.m. to conclude the last of the 23 local governments, which is Kudan local government in Kaduna, permit me.
Right. Thank you so much for that update, Benga. Now, I can only imagine there's a lot of restlessness going on. Earlier, it seemed as though the PDP was in the lead. Can you confirm for us, as we stand with the results currently announced, who is leading and what are we looking at between now and 6 p.m.?
Well, what I can confirm to you right now, and in all sincerity, that this is a tough call. It's a tough call. It's the APC and the PDP are running neck to neck in this contest. It's difficult to put a figure on it now and to tell you who is leading. But what I can tell you that this is a tough call, and it's indeed a two-horse race. That's what I can tell you now. But what you might also need to consider is that there have been agitation from some party agents about the conduct of the elections, especially discrepancies relating to figures of accredited voters, PVC collected, and the number of figures INEC is reading out here. Party agents have really come out to protest the figures. So that's the situation right now at the Kaduna INEC Collation Center.
So, but Benga, how can they be protesting the figures when that is the very reason why BVAS was set up? So BVAS was set up to accredit the number of voters, and then IREF should just upload it. So what is the delay? Is it an internet issue? Is it what exactly is the delay, and how can there be a disruption or disagreement over figures when that is the very reason why BVAS was introduced into this particular election?
Well, I won't want to hold brief for INEC, but from what I have observed so far is that this is a democratic experiment. When you copy and paste without taking note of some certain peculiarities in the culture, this is the kind of result you get. Well, you remember that at the Osun and the Ekiti election, people thought that was a litmus test. That was where the BVAS and IREV worked to a considerable extent, even though people still went to court. But right now, we are saying that it's a democratic experiment as well as a democratic journey. It's like the more you look, the less you see. That was what we also expect. Everyone expected that by now the final figure would have been read out. But this is the situation. Only INEC can explain this. Perhaps going forward, INEC will have to tidy up all these loose ends to ensure that we are progressing in our democratic journey.
So much, Benga. I'm also wondering, on your way to the Collation Center, what the atmosphere must have been like in terms of, members of the electorate just waiting to find out which party has won. Just wondering if you were able to interact with some of them and give us a general sense of the atmosphere.
I wish there was a politics gauge here that could measure the political temperature right here at Akwangari area in Kaduna State. But when you come to a place like this where it's indeed a high stake and where that would see decision coming out that would see the emergence of a new leader in a prominent state as Kaduna State, you would know that indeed the stake is indeed high. You see the high the heavy presence of security. Before coming into this venue, we were thoroughly screened and scrutinized before to ensure that all the participants are well accredited to be part of this exercise. So the mood is a bit of a huge anxiety in the air. Right now, people are disappointed that the winner, that will still have to wait for the next 4 hours before the winner of the Kaduna governorship race could be announced, while other states have gotten their winners announced.
Benga Ashiru, thank you, live from Kaduna. Thank you so much for that update. I suppose now all that's left for us to do is wait until 6 p.m. where hopefully there will be some sort of confirmation or declaration. Thank you so much. Fingers crossed.
Mr. Kunnu, why are we here? We just talked about this digital issue. I'm still at a loss as to how we have to wait until 6 p.m. to be able to get these results. This is not a complicated thing. You take a picture of somebody, you get their fingerprints. If it doesn't work, you then take a picture. And they are accredited. In fact, we're even getting the debt numbers from Kaduna, which itself has, look at Kaduna, IGR is only 39%, 60% of their revenues come from FAC, so they're still dependent on government. But anyway, how is it that we have to wait this long to get results from? I mean, is there not going to be worries now of figures being, jigged up or whatever?
There's a tectonic shift, as we normally have in geography, on the political landscape of the country. And for those who are physicists and geographers, and those who are seismologists, to tell you that some places right now that are covered by water at some points were dry areas. And some countries that used to be are no more. And that's why I talk about the Atlantis. I'm saying here that on the Nigerian political landscape, there's a tectonic shift. And the earthquake being caused right now is connotative. And in reality, when you're shifting from one point to the other, the elements will begin to struggle because they have a comfort zone and they're shifting to another level. And I want to bring that analogy into Nigeria's political space to say that the current situation we're in is that it is dawning on the bulwarks, hitherto bulwarks, that things are pretty much changing. One would never have expected that a sitting governor, for instance, will not have a single senatorial seat allocated to his party after an election, and that's in Kaduna State. And one would also never have expected that an NNPP that started his reverberation over a year in Kano would get over 1 million votes in the election, and an APC that has had a governor for over 8 years, or about 8 years, will only have 800,000 plus. It means, therefore, that there's something changing. Something changing so much that a Peter Obi had to win a Tinubu in Lagos by scoring more points. Of course, both of them scored over 500,000. But we had thousands ahead for Peter Obi. Nobody expected that. So it means, therefore, also that for people who are analysts, keen analysts of this kind of situation, these things are indicative of the shifts and the changes we're having. If you look at Kaduna, for instance, you're talking about a state that still has about 60% dependency.
Yeah.
And you're talking about a Kaduna that has deposits of certain mineral resources. And don't also forget, Kaduna has the capacity for tourism. There are some music that have been made in Nigeria where they had to use a particular castle that was built in a place in Kaduna. And I'm telling you, there are states that have also refused to evolve or that want to sink or sit with certain ideologies that is not progressive or contemporary, will have problems of the revenue generation. So if you look at all of this put together, it is of course a moment in history where people have been reconscientized into thinking that now the power belongs to them. Let me say this. One of the things that helped the Lagos State governor was simply emotional intelligence. If you seek votes in the West, what you do in the West, you go to barber's shop, you go to the supermarket, you go to mechanic workshop. Before this time, would have people organize rallies and will bring all sorts of strange human beings to rallies and everybody shouts and it makes media buzz. In actual fact, you get people's vote by going to their homes.
Right.
And I am happy that for the first time in Lagos politics, and perhaps it will become exemplary to other persons, that will see governors going to people's homes to tell them, I'm the one for you. In the past 2 weeks, Governor Sanwo-Olu has become a courier delivery, has become a salon operator, has done a lot. In fact, he was almost a bricklayer. And quite frankly, it doesn't reduce him because these people are also part of the society.
Right.
And listen, Rotus, please. The idea is, if you are able to campaign to those places and have a first-hand feel of what is happening to those that are below perhaps average in society, then you remember those you visited and you are able to also let them access the dividends of your leadership. And I'm happy that this is happening. So I'm saying that for a fact, the reason that result is not announced or won't be announced until 6 is because there's a consciousness happening. Why are we losing? Are we going to lose this again? What is happening to us? And the palpable fear, perhaps a palpable fear of being thrown out of office with all your emblem is the reason we have seen that. But we cannot also accuse INEC, because that instruction could not be given by anybody but INEC representative. Is that there are certain things peculiar to different places. I talked about connection. The areas we're talking about may not have proper connection. At some point in Lafia, for instance, in Nasarawa State, the state capital, you will not even have connection at the state capital. So I'm saying here that at times we should not make generalizations. It may actually be that there are connection issues, and the person in question wants to stay conscious of the realities of people's disaffections and anger and want to be careful. But in all Rotus, we have come to a stage in the nation's contemporary politics where the electorate will now be afraid. Kano has 44 local governments. We used to think that anybody who leads in Kano, don't forget, the PDP was there, taken over by Ganduje, APC. Now it has gone to an entirely new party, NNPP. And that tells you that we are moving towards that actual connotated tectonic shift. And when we get there, hopefully, a lot of people will be sensitized enough to know that there has to be an ascendancy and consistency in all of this drive to have a better country. Rotus, if you check Wall Street, about 10, 20 biggest investment bankers have Nigerians at pivotal positions who are the reasons for their successes. So you are somebody in that field. And if we can add value at that level, my apologies, we should replicate that here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kunnu. Very insightful.
Thank you, too.
We still have with us in our Abuja studio, God bless Otubure. Thank you so much for staying with us. Now, when all this has been going on, I usually pay attention to what people have to say, when we're streaming these the Nigeriadecides. And there was a comment that was mentioned by someone who was a foreigner at that time, she obviously from another country, and she hinted, she wrote there, Nigerians are letting this happen, they're too docile. I didn't know how I received that. It was a mixed feeling because people did die during these elections, and at the same time, we're just looking at the whole process, and it's not necessarily one that can be applauded. So I'm just wondering, since you're part of the Ready to Lead Africa, if you were going to answer that question that was posed by that foreigner, would you say that Nigerians have been docile and that's why things have disintegrated to the point that we find ourselves today?
I wouldn't say we've been docile. I think the kind of docility that person was referring to is not participatory docility. The person is referring to taking action and holding people accountable kind of docility. That's what the person was referring to. So I mean, we had a situation room, which we sadly closed yesterday, but we're continuing in our office during the presidential election, the octagon, and then the governorship elections as well. And I had foreigners who came in, and I was taking them around, going from polling unit to polling unit, and it was shameful. I felt really terrible when fellow Africans looked at me and said, it's a shame that you guys cannot even conduct elections. I mean, that's like the easiest thing we do in our countries. And I said, well, Well, I mean, our generation will do better. But nevertheless, the kind of docility that the person is talking about is not about participatory docility. Look, when you look at what has happened with the presidential election, and you look at the fact
President of Ready to Lead Africa, I'm so sorry to interject, but thank you so much for your contribution.